Okay, it's telling me I think we're live. Okay, let me get on Facebook here really quick. Hello, everybody. Looks like it is coming on. How exciting. Oh, man, I love Facebook Live. I'm so excited to be on
We're
here.
here.
We're here. We're on here. So cool. And I just want to say welcome to today's Facebook Live hosted by Travify Academy with our three amazing panelists who I will introduce in just a moment. But first, just to quickly introduce myself, is I'm Stephanie Grice, and I'm the Senior Client Champion and Education Coordinator here at Travify. And thanks again for joining us. And today what we wanted to do is we really just want to open a conversation up on how advisors and travel professionals can help protect their business. Because really, if there's anything we've learned in the past 16 months, which is insane, it's been like 16 months. It's crazy how fast it's going. But the one thing that's really important that we have learned is just that there should be a plan in place for a successful business to make sure that it will stay healthy and growing. So we're going to discuss, so many different ways that you can help protect and future-proof your business by talking about things like service fees and diversifying your business, marketing, sales, so many things. We're going to cover all of that here. But also, the one thing I want to mention too is for anyone new to Travify Academy webinars, if this is your first time joining us, super excited to have you here. But really just to give you a little backstory on Travify Academy is we are a free educational resource to just help further Travify's mission to power the success of travel professionals. So you can always find webinar replays, articles, other helpful content at academy.travify.com. And be sure to like us on this Facebook page, which maybe you already have, but if you haven't, make sure you hit that like button and you'll see all the content on there as well. And the other thing I want to mention too, before I introduce our panelists, is we will have time at the end for questions. Well, I mean, there is a chance if we get going and chatting, but we probably will have time. We'll see what happens. But please do put those questions in the comment section, and I will be watching them. So I'll try to keep a really good eye on them and get those for our panelists. But for the moment we've been waiting for, to introduce our panelists here today. And I have to say, we are covering 3 different countries of panelists here today. So we have Dave Natale, aka the River Cruise King, and he's in Germany. So welcome. So with over 36 years in the travel industry, Dave has tons of expertise on building a successful business. So we're excited to have you here today. It'll be fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the crowd goes crazy.
Yeah. And drum roll, please. We also have Geraldine Ree, and she's in Canada. So we have our Canadian neighbors up north. How exciting. Geraldine is author and business coach, and not only has she been in the travel industry for 28 years, but she's also helped many, many advisors become very successful with their business. So I'm really excited to hear all the cool stories and advice that you have here today. So welcome as well. We're excited to have you.
So excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie.
Yeah, anytime. You can come on, and everyone's welcome all the time in here. And then
it's an open door policy. Just come into the webinar unannounced, unsolicited.
Just come on in. And on that, we have our very own, Travify's very own, Scott Rutz, who's in the U.S.
I'm in the U.S. Stephanie and I are just a wall apart.
Yes, so. We really are. Yep. So yeah, I have to
Very
remember
close.
to kind of talk a little quieter because it'll just ricochet off of there.
It's actually not within her spiritual being to bring the volume down. The energy just always stays here.
It does. It stays pretty high, especially on Facebook Live. It's really exciting.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about having Scott on here is we don't typically bring in our own to these webinars. But when we do, it's got to be good, I'd be waiting for that.
And this is fun because I think what's really cool about the group that we have today is that it's a really diverse set of perspectives, from Dave being a expert practitioner in building a really highly successful business, Geraldine, from your perspectives of working with so many advisors, from your experience in the media covering so much within the industry, and then on my side of getting to chat with literally thousands of advisors on a yearly basis. And it gives you a perspective of hearing what's working for different advisors, how they're growing their business, different techniques. So I love the diversity of perspective that we'll have.
Absolutely. And that's why I've been so looking forward to this webinar, because it is going to be just really great stuff all over, different topics being covered. So we're excited. And I do want to say, before we jump into the questions, feel free, panelists, jump in at any point if you have anything to add or, that you want to include in there. But I feel like we should dive into the first one, because I know there's going to be so much to cover. So
Well, be careful what you wish for.
that is true. We all, yes, it'll get good, because we are going to touch on so many things. So it'll be cool. But the first thing that we're going to touch on is one of my personal favorites, because it's always, anytime it gets brought up in a Travify Academy webinar, questions pour in. Charging fees. That's where we're going here, folks, first. So that's what I want to talk about. And I want to start with Dave, because for any of you who have gotten a little sneak peek and listened to the Lounge Travify Academy podcast, Geraldine's been on it as well, but Dave has been on it too, and he let it slip that changing fees has just completely changed his business. So I was like, you got to get on this webinar, Dave. This is so cool. So can you share just how you started adding those service fees after the pandemic started and how it's impacted your business?
Sure. I had never really thought about charging fees before, and I never really considered myself to be a travel agent, because I started my business more or less just to facilitate my river cruises that I was escorting and that I put together with AMA Waterways. But as they grew and grew and grew, and I was doing more service for my guests, it wasn't just, hey, come on a river cruise with me. It started to be everybody wanted to know, what were the hotels that I would recommend staying in here? What tours would I recommend here? And what are my favorite restaurants here? And I found myself putting together all these very elaborate trips and planning things for my guests, and it was taking up a lot of time. Now, I always considered that to be a service that I was providing, that my unique selling point was, hey, I'm an American guy living in Germany. I've been in Europe 20 years. There's no place that I don't know really intimately. So book with me. And so by providing those services, I thought that was already something great. But then, of course, COVID hit, and all the commissions started to disappear. And I had been prepared for a time like this, but not this long of a time or this great big of a shock. And in one of the programs that I was participating in earlier this year, they were talking about fees. And I thought, would my guests pay a fee? And the point that was made was, your time, you are a professional. And just like a doctor, just like a lawyer, when you go in to ask for professional services, you should pay for those services. The river cruise commissions are being paid to me by the cruise lines for what I'm doing for them. So when all these guests were asking me for extra services, it became clear that I needed to start charging for my time. And I thought about it long and hard, and I created a two-tier system wherein I would give those guests who are very low maintenance and would probably balk at paying a fee, I gave them a free option for my services, which kind of limits what I will do for them to a total of a half an hour during the whole booking. And those who want more from me, I came up with a per cabin fee, and I presented it to the guests with the choice, and I was shocked that even people who had been booked for over a year and have, during COVID have rescheduled, they were all like, we'll pay your fee. You're worth it. You're worth it. And, to hear them say you're worth it was gratifying in your soul. But I will say the $20,000 that I've taken in fees in the last 3 months has been gratifying from my bank account. And it's just nice to it's nice. It takes the pressure off. When I started in the industry back at Cruises Only in Orlando all those years ago, one of the things that Judy and Wayne used to say to us was, sell from a position of power. And as a young little person in this industry, I didn't think I had any power. I had never been anywhere. I worked at Disney World. And what power did I have? But I had knowledge, and I was helping them. And I learned over time that you don't have to personally experience everything in order to sell something. And even if I had not been to a place, I would say things like, well, I might not have been there, but this is how I would do it and why. And people started to listen to me and buy from me. And it just became kind of a cycle that I realized that I had something to offer even then. Now, 36 years later, and tons of world travel and living abroad, I have really great things to offer my guests, and they all know it. And Christine at Emma Waterway, she said, Dave, I've been waiting for the day when you realize this. And I
Oh,
said, well,
that's
I
cool.
realized it, so pay my fee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Dave, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is whenever Stephanie or I talk about fees on webinars, the most commonly asked question is, how did you decide on what fee level, literally like the dollar amount to start at? And then did you ever have to adjust it, deciding, maybe this wasn't right? Did you figure something out? How did you go about that and
It's
decide where to set that?
That's an excellent question because I'm actually at that point right now. I I thought about how much in a typical uh, booking, how much time do I give, and what should that be worth on an hourly basis? And I came up with a what I thought would be a fair but not a frightening number. And settled on $200 a cabin, which I think is still cheap, but it is a symbolic fee. And I decided to use that as my introduction. I've already decided that I will be raising my fee soon once things start to pick up. And
Well
it
done.
also, there are people that I think fit in that level, but then I realize now that I can also add some extras to the fee. So what I've decided to do is I will stick with my base fee of 200 per cabin, but then for the guests that really need some extra customization, um, I will double it because there are, I'm happy to. In fact, I had one lady, her name's Tanya Day. Hi, Tanya. She's like, Dave, I want to pay your fee some more. Can you do this and this and this for me? I know it falls outside of what your river cruise fee is, but I'm willing to pay more for you to use your expertise on these other things. So she paid me $600. So I was like, thank you, Miss Tanya.
That's awesome.
So, hmm.
Oh, that is so incredible. That story just is really cool. And of course, too, with the pandemic, one thing that everyone has realized is a travel agent is extremely helpful, and I should choose to book that way. So, that's
Absolutely.
the fee just makes sense,
Yeah.
because that's
And $200 is not a lot of money. I mean, my guests are spending anywhere from ten to $50,000 on a trip. What is $200? There
Yeah.
are guests that because of my knowledge, I can save them a lot of money. And I always tell them, if I save you money here, you can use it to improve this part of your trip. They're still going to spend the same amount basically, but they reallocate the funds. And, when someone can give you that type of advice and save you and maximize your travel experience and make that adventure all the better, then a couple hundred extra dollars is really nothing. And if you're working with your ideal clients, they're going to be more than happy to pay your fee. So if you're also coming across clients that don't want to pay your fee, you might want to ask yourself, you know, not every client is worth your time. And that's not to say the person isn't valuable as a human being, but they're not valuable as a customer or client. And I had to get to the point and say, Dave, are you doing this as a hobby or is this a business? And what are you going to be serious about this, or are you going to just continue? Because I will admit, for a while, I was selling so many cruises and making a nice living with very little effort. A couple of newsletters a year, writing up some planners. Um, and I thought, it's time to take this to the next level. So I have to be serious and I have to commit to being a business person and not just someone who is having some fun working in the travel industry.
Yep. No, so important. And Geraldine, what are your thoughts on that? I know we've chatted a little bit about charging fees, but what have you seen, and what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, Dave, congratulations on doing a pivot with your business that has been so successful. I love it from both the monetary side of it and also just your confidence and conviction. You are fantastic, and congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that.
That's
From
very
my
nice.
perspective, I get asked this a lot, like you guys. I speak to thousands of travel agents in my career, and I think I go up a level and say, I don't want us to feel punitive to people who feel like they don't want to charge fees. It's a personal decision. But what I love about this conversation is that it's not about the fees, it's about knowing where you are in the buying cycle. And what I mean by that is that we give way too much away for free. So it's really a productivity question. And are you in discovery? Are you asking questions? Are you finding out their why? Are you really in that? Well, that's free. You can do that. I can do that for you. But the minute you come to my expertise and I customize, I'm now implementing. I'm now in service. So what a fee allows you to do is say, where are we in this relationship? And why I like the fee is it's very clear. We're moving from discovery, and I'm getting so excited about being in service to creating something magical for you. If we're going further, this is what this looks like. So it takes it away from the money conversation, and it really becomes about what is your expertise, what do you give away, and then when are we doing this? A really easy way of saying, a short way is that staying in the why before they buy.
Yeah.
And how you make money, whether it's by charging a fee, and I personally believe that and advocate for that. But I've seen a lot of people make money in markups. I've seen them, create other kinds of things. As long as you have a profitable business and you're really managing your time, it's your return on time, exactly like Dave said.
I totally wrote that down, Geraldine.
So you got to tweet that later.
Yeah.
So there are two things that Dave and Geraldine touched on, two different things that I think are really helpful elements to figuring out how to set your fees. Dave knows his customers intimately. That's a really important point of knowing what should they expect, what are they open to, what's a reasonable fee, and how is my time valuable to my customer. But with Geraldine, also like understanding your process to a science and being able to elaborate on that process and that it's a repeatable process, because then with the type of customer and your process of how to implement those fees. Those are two really important points, I think, that go into the equation of how each advisor might implement fees to their business.
Well, and one of the things that I found was that we can't work from our own pocketbooks. Sometimes I find travel agents and that I've been working with, they sell or they market from their own experience and their own pocketbook instead of going out and, looking for and servicing clients who, everyone, there's a bit of like fear of money, I think, that plays into this, and people are not valuing themselves to a certain dollar amount because maybe they're earning something in a certain realm, like commission structure, whatever. But they have to value themselves. And it's not that people who don't charge fees don't value themselves, but I think they're not valuing their time and what they're giving to their customer and seeing that that's a monetary return that they deserve. And
Yeah.
we haven't seen that. We've also been in a commission only world for a very long time. It's hard to change that, but we should. And COVID, Stephanie, you said it. COVID has shown, because there was that thing like, oh, who needs a travel agent? I can go online. And well, you know what? Travel agents saved a lot of people a lot of aggravation, a lot of time, and a lot of money. And we are now, like, in the 80s, it was cool to have a great stockbroker. Well, now it's cool to have a great travel agent. And that's what
It
we
is,
are.
and
We have to pay for that. They have to pay.
so important. I think this was just released this week, and I think it's so critical, is that we in the travel industry have been through the worst of it and for longer, and it's expected to take the travel industry longer to rebound. But all other industries have been booming and they've had a good
Yep.
year, and we're not
Yeah.
even able to sometimes visualize that outside of the hospitality industry. So what you said is so bang on, is that we have this unusual sort of 6-month period where we've been repressed and others are booming, and so we need to be in their mindset, not ours, that they're looking for, they're practicing with their suitcase in their hallways. Like, people are ready, and like you
Wow.
said, they're not a secret. They need an advisor to navigate the nuances of travel in the future.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and as an industry, like, I 100% agree with what both of you said. As an industry, uh, although it has been primarily commission based, we have to, as an industry, start making it the exception to not charge fees and make fees a general rule. Now, Geraldine, as you touched on, every travel advisor has to make the decision for themselves of what makes sense for their business and their customers. Because I've chatted with a lot of advisors that, because of the makeup of their business, the focus, the price points that they work with, fees just aren't a reality for them. They don't feel comfortable with it. But that should be the exception, that you're servicing a certain segment of the market, because working with advisors that have such deep and immense expertise, it has to be known that you will pay a fee for that. There is also a unique opportunity right now coming out of COVID, that there are a lot of new customers coming into the market that never would have used a travel advisor before, and that this is a chance to set kind of the ground rules and
Mm-hmm.
and rule engagement, that service fees are, this is, as an industry, where it's going, or where it is.
And I think
Well,
easier for advisors, what I hear over and over is that new people, they get it. They think
right.
Yeah.
introducing it, it's perfect timing, it makes perfect sense. It's struggling with that loyal customer who's been with them for a long time, but bringing them into their reality as the business has changed and the way we're compensated has changed. And we've learned a lot through COVID. We do a lot of work that you don't see. And it comes down to the value is, did you know I worry about your vacation from the beginning, middle, and end, and I'm all over it.
Mhm.
That peace of mind, clients are willing to pay anything to have that kind of security and safety conversation going forward.
And that reminds me, Jared, and to come back to your question, Scott, I also created back end fees for, because I didn't used to charge people for, moving a cabin or cancellations
Mhm.
above and beyond what the cruise line did. But that is my time as well. So I initiated swap fees and cancellation fees that are in addition to the cruise line, and I put it on my registration form that should you cancel later, there is a fee that I charge in addition to the cruise line. And during the booking procedure, people don't pay so much attention, but I always mention it. And part of it is because when COVID happened and we kept losing our commissions, and you would take that person who was booked and rebook them for the next year, well, that's twice the amount of work for one commission. So you're cutting your value of your earnings in half. And one of the people who I think is not my customer anymore made this comment about, well, I booked with you because I know you get money from the cruise line from my booking. And I said, excuse me, but I do a lot of work for you. And when you cancel, I'm not getting the payment that you think you're giving me. So therefore, I'm charging you for the many, many hours of things that I did for you. And they weren't very happy about it. But I'm sorry, our time is valuable and we are worth being paid for what we do.
And that's really smart, just to add a slight amount of friction to make sure people are serious about the decisions they're making with you, in
Yes.
any business, that your customers are making an active, thoughtful, critical decision, and it's not just a flippant, like, yeah, I'm going to change cabins. Well, if you apply a price to that, that does make them think of, just so you know, this will incur a $50 fee to process this request for you. It is really, really helpful in that regard.
Yeah. Matthew just commented in, this is kind of cool. My biggest change to my language is that I now have a trip management charge, because he doesn't like the word fees. So just changing that term. So that's really smart.
That is a
Yeah.
great term, Mr. Matthew
Yeah,
Proof.
that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch up just a little bit here. I bet though, if we get to questions, we'll probably come back to fees because, like I said, so popular. It's the hottest topic around
Show
town.
me the money.
Yeah. But another thing, and we kind of touched on this a little bit as we were talking about that actually, is just if, either way can be a successful avenue for your business of either, having a special niche, or is it also good to diversify yourself? And you could do kind of a merge of both of those too. But I want to kind of talk about that. So Geraldine, I'll start off with you first on this because I know from all the advisors and agency owners, you work with so many of them. What have they, or have you seen that they have found most helpful in a business? Is it specializing in a niche, diversifying? Where does it usually land?
Absolutely. You're talking to the passion queen, and passion and purpose is what I believe everybody needs in their life, let alone their business. So, the most successful people, look at Richard Branson. He just went to into space, a dream that he's had since he was a child, and he manifested that and made that happen. And so by far the most successful people on the planet are people who really pay attention to their purpose. And so in my experience, the people who stand out to me, the people I remember, like Dave the River Cruise King, or my beautiful choir groups that go down the river, or people who say, I'm wild about expedition and adventure cruising. When they have that passion themselves, they attract those people to them. There's no race for customers. You find your customers through what you specialize in. And I think sometimes for agency owners, that's a challenge because they want to have a broader segment. But if they have a team of people who all have their individual passions, then it's a really interesting agency. It's a really interesting customer experience. So I really think the thing is to specialize in the customers you love who you love, doing the work you love to the places you love to sell. It's a recipe for success. And that's what I'm seeing out there. And, the second piece of that really quick is that people do want to come back differently. We've all had a tough go. And even prior to the pandemic, it wasn't rose-colored glasses. And, as well, Scott knows, too busy, too many applications, too many changes, not enough return on time. So people are saying, hey, how do I be more selective? And by niching your business and being with like-minded people, there's less choices to make every day. You're just really simplifying your life. And I think that's when we see people coming back going forward. They're saying, no, I've said I want to shift to luxury for so long now. That's it. I am doing it. And what do I need to do to make that happen?
Yeah, no, it's a great opportunity for people to make those shifts. And in terms of, diversifying products and things like that, I think that's, diversifying revenue streams in introducing fees. That's one part of it. Diversifying products is another. Diversifying sales cycles is also another. But specifically in products and sales cycles, I chatted with a lot of advisors throughout COVID that COVID was not a shutdown of their business. It was a speed bump, but it wasn't a shutdown. That, like Dave, I chatted with an advisor out on the East Coast. This was in the fall, I believe. So like in the US, that was the thick of COVID, that everything was shut down. In chatting with her, she's like, yeah, I don't have any clients traveling right now, but I'm booking river cruises in 2022, 2023, and she's collecting service fees and things on that. So point being, it wasn't a shutdown of her business. It definitely slowed down. And by all practical purposes, it was a significant speed bump, but business continued. And that's a really important point in terms of the products, but also the sales cycles, that if you're only selling trips that are booked 6 months out, any blip on the radar is going to kind of destroy any of those sales cycles for the next 6 months. So e.g. all-inclusives or things like that. The other thing that is chatting with an advisor, sells lots of destination weddings. So she's not only diversifying her sales cycles of booking a long ways out, but diversifying the age groups that she works with. And it was interesting because, and this is not an endorsement or whatever, but she literally said, there's some destination weddings, and now that the COVID restrictions are lifted, they're just going for it. They know the risks and they're traveling. And she said, I'm making sure my clients understand what, the travel restrictions are and things like that. and they want to continue on and live life and stuff. And so by all means, that's their choices to make. But the thing that was remarkable to me is that by working with different sales cycles and different fee structures, then again, it's not a shutdown, it's not a stop, it's just a slowdown and then speed up. And so they're still able to have continuity of their business that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think, sorry.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, just jumping quickly on what you said about weddings, what I love about the travel industry and social media is that you see the trends. So the wedding industry was shut down, obviously crowds over 50. The minute that door cracked open, you can't get a wedding in Canada. I don't know about the US, but until 2024. Forget about it.
Okay.
Everybody's having the parties they couldn't have. And so travel advisors looking to specialize go, that's interesting. Weddings are off the hook. Maybe this is a good time for me to specialize in that. So it's paying attention to trends outside our industry and being able to, make that a go for your own business.
And talk about a specialty that lends itself to charging fees. Like 100%.
Big fees.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely. So, and as far as niches go, I fell into my niche. I have a tour guide business up in Warnemünde where we service the large cruise ships, but everyone kept asking me about river cruises. And I knew that was the next booming area of cruising. And I came upon Ama Waterways because during my research, they were the ones that were most easy for me as a non-travel agent, non-brick and mortar person to work with. And I fell into that niche. But now I'm completely focused. I put my groups together only on Ama Waterways. So I'm uber niched, to say. And when you're going to find a niche or when you're going to put yourself into a category, work with the people who value you. Work with the people who pay you good commissions. Work with the people who make it easy for you to sell their products, who support you, who give you marketing assistance, who will help build you as an agent, as well as you're building their business, bringing your clients there. I was lucky. I'm planned right now through 2024. I could tell you where I'm going to be.
Wow.
Because I'm building my groups and selling out ships. And by niching and being a real specialist in a particular area, my people know that there's nothing about AMA that I can't answer. There's nothing about the places that AMA goes that I can't answer. So they turn to me, even if they're not going to take a river cruise, they know that Budapest is a hub. And if they're going there, they will ask me if I can help them there. So your niche can define you, but also make sure that you define your niche and that you're working with people who value you on the money side.
That's good.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love hearing about those too, just and hearing how people fall into them. So it's just such a cool story in that. So thank you all for sharing that. So for the next topic question that I want to talk on is just business practices, which could be so many different things, but just things that any of you have found that even in your own business or just hearing from other advisors or agents that you have found that has helped them keep their company, staying pretty well during this time, and then also just really helping it to keep growing in the future. So Geraldine, I'll start with you again, because one thing that I really like about your personal coaching and author, since you're an author and you wrote a book and you have just different, talk about diversifying, you have all kinds of stuff going on. So it's really awesome, but you do a lot of creating content. And I think that's cool too, because with marketing, you're keeping people in touch and going. So is there any business practices and consistencies you've found that can help make a business thrive, whether it's marketing or somewhere else that we're not talking about too?
Yeah, I love this because I could go crazy. I could write all day. It won't pay the bills. We all have passion things. We love to do things that come easily. And then there's other things that we struggle with. And, my best practice that I work with my clients is just knowing the zones that you're in. And I think there's sort of 3 zones of productivity. And I'm pretty rigorous around those and helping people because the day gets away from us. And the best things is the consistency of it. So in taking the pandemic, as Scott mentioned, the people who saw it as a blip rather than a long countrywide mile of stop are the people who kept moving. So day in, day out, making those daily calls, making those little connections, those small, movements that keep you going forward, even when you don't feel like it. It's
Mm-hmm.
just knowing those recurring activities that you have to do no matter what and sticking to them. And as far as content goes, there is so much helpful content out for travel agents. You almost have to slow down and say, okay, am I a creator or am I a consumer? Am I out there building a business or am I just reading all about it and attending every webinar? At some point, you need to take action. And
Yeah.
so even if it's just that rigor around, okay, every time I learn something new, I'm going to stop and say, okay, how is this going to help in my business? So that's kind of my approach to it. Is everybody has their thing. I think productivity and being really rigorous around what has to get done to keep this business moving forward.
And I
Yeah.
think people have to remember that your business is not just the immediate sale that's in front of you. If you're building relationships with your clients over a long period of time, and I'm very lucky, I have about an 80% repeat passenger rate of the people in my groups. And it's because I build relationships with them over time. I'm not only interested in them because they're going to book something now. Sometimes, a year, 2, 3 years will go by in between someone taking a river cruise. I'm not going to just forget that person during the time that they're not cruising. So it's important for me to maintain my relationships with my customers, and whether that's through Facebook or newsletters, or I've started doing YouTube now. I lost my fear of being on video, and
Here you are.
um, and here we are. But and the thing is that is great is that I'm I'm getting people who, just this week I had a lady who went on one of my tours. What was it, 9 years ago? And she's had my newsletter all this time. And she said, we've decided we're finally going to take a river cruise. We want to go with you. And she said, we loved getting your newsletters all this time. And now we're ready to go. Where should we go? And they booked. It took them about 45 minutes and they booked.
Wow.
But that was
That's great.
9 years of maintaining the relationship. And that's why, like, this thing with COVID and this time, I decided for myself, after about 4 months of moping and sitting in bed until noon and knowing what all the housewives were doing, uh, I decided, look, as horrible as this is a gift of time that we don't normally have. And I use this time to completely revamp all my processes, to start using Travify and working with things, and updating my content. But I did it to build and strengthen and maintain the relationship that I have with my clients. Because even if they're not traveling today, they're going to travel at some point, and I want to be the one they think of. And so that's what's very important for everybody to do, is to recognize that your customers are not just your sale of today. They're also your customer who will think of you tomorrow when they are ready. And you need to keep yourself in their minds. And you have to figure out what's comfortable for you on how to do that.
That's really good. I call that tending the garden. That
Yeah, exactly.
the
100%.
harvest only
100%.
happens once a year, but you have to tend the garden and work the entire time through that. So that's really good.
Absolutely.
Like in
Yeah.
terms of business practices, a couple things that we've noticed internally at Travify as we work with customers, but also just in terms of sales and business best practices. One way to further diversify, but also help increase the health of your business is not just diversifying revenue, but expanding the revenue. Are you leaving money on the table for ancillaries, other types of planning fees? Are you giving an honest to goodness pitch on why in the world the client should be purchasing travel insurance? And
Oh, absolutely. Especially
asking them
now.
about their plan. Yeah, unfortunately, like as I chat with travel advisors, some are immensely like talented at pitching travel insurance. Some approach it as if I know you're going to say no to this, so just let's get this over with.
That's
I'm like,
crazy. Crazy
I
talk.
know. And take it from a guy that lost a lot of money on travel and COVID from cancellations and things, like that. Like, travel insurance is something you need to think about and tell the clients why with that. So, that's one way. The other thing that we've chatted a little bit about as an industry is having cash reserves. Our CEO used this really famous quote by Warren Buffett that when the tide goes out, you see who's not wearing a bathing suit. And
I better not stand up.
I know. Well, but here's the thing, and I do not make light of this because these are real people's businesses and lives. But then we noticed firstly, when COVID hit, the moment revenue is shut off for some companies, they were laying people off and furloughing. And I'm not going to speak for every business because I don't know the internal workings, but generally speaking, that means they have nearly zero cash reserves and are highly leveraged in some cases. Not all cases, not going to speak for all of that. But like with your businesses, like 3 to 6 months minimum of cash reserves is a healthy standpoint to be at. If you can do more than that, great. If that's not possible, that's the reality. But having some types of cash reserves so that you can invest in your business, invest in hiring, invest in marketing or automation systems, whatever it might be, or consulting, all of that is really, really useful so that you're in a better, healthier position moving forward.
I think a wonderful continuation of that, and I think that's so observant because not only is it cash reserves, but it's people, richness of people and depths of people. There is no question the layoffs have impacted everyone. Really amazing advisors are, working at Home Depot because they have to. They have to pay the bill. And are we doing enough as an industry in terms of best practices in recruiting and bringing people in? Every agency I talked to in the last probably 60, 90 days say that, the discovery nights of bringing people into the industry is at an all-time high because it's no secret that people want to travel again and they're going to need an advisor. So I think getting ahead of bringing new people on and, if you're an advisor, making sure you're making good decisions about who you align with, because these are really the people matter. That's who's going to make the difference in the comeback. And, I don't know what the tide going out analogy is if you don't have anybody with bathing suits, but it's a good one.
And I think it was also a lesson. Who are you working with? Which of your vendors and providers stuck by you as well? And now that we're starting back, and this goes back again to our time and how we allocate it and what we get for it, who do you want to dedicate your selling time to? Now, I consider myself so fortunate that Amma Waterways is my partner because they took care of guests, they took care of agents, they took care of their employees. They opened everything up and told everyone how they planned to get through this time. And I was able to convince all of my guests. Well, I would say around 75% of my guests accepted Amma's very generous credit offer. And some people that had only been with them once or twice or once before said, well, how do I know they'll still be around to use this credit? Well, they have $7 billion in cash reserves, so I think they'll be around. And they made things clear, but they also then started every single week going on, just like you guys, and propping everybody up. And so look around right now, who that you're working with and that you're selling was there for you and helped you sell them now. Return that favor and know that that's a reliable partner. The ones that just started laying people off and, were only fending for themselves and didn't care about the travel advisors, why would you sell that product again? So that's a lesson that I learned, and I really felt myself really very lucky. But I also made sure that my guests knew that my guests knew that Amma Waterways was standing there and giving them options. They could have had a refund, or they could have a generous credit, 115%. And who is making it easy for me to sell them? I think that's also very important.
The aspect of knowing your partners and having deep relationships is super important,
Yeah,
because if there's ever a time that you need a relationship to kind of fall back on and work through, is the last 16 months. When things get tough,
absolutely.
those relationships make everything easier, whether it's a single isolated instance of something crazy happening with a booking and you need assistance, or like
Mhm.
COVID, where it's just a global shutdown of it. Those deep relationships are so useful within business. And so, especially as
Absolutely.
conferences kind of kick back up, use this as your opportunity to get out there, meet your BDMs or other reps that are at the
Mhm.
conferences, have coffee, have lunch, like get to know them really well, to Dave's point of building that relationship.
Mhm.
That's a great idea with conferences. Just they're, starting to come back, build those relationships. The suppliers, that was a big one too. That over the webinars that we would have with talking about COVID, and that was a big one. So thanks for bringing that one up too. And since we have this has gone so fast, I have one more question, and then we'll see if we have time for get in questions. But I really just want to open this up to all of our panelists and just see, none of us have a crystal ball, so I know that we can't really 100% answer this. But what are you seeing for the future of travel so far? So I know us all being in different countries, we're all seeing travel a little bit differently. So you can look at it from that lens,
Mhm.
but also, is there something that you're seeing other yourself or other advisors starting to do? Like the fees is one of them. So I'll just open it up and let just kind of talking about what is the future starting to look like as travel really comes back.
Geraldine.
Well, I'm going to say the future is bright. And what I'm seeing is a whole lot of relief almost, this feeling like, oh, it actually is now happening. It's still a little bit lumpy and it will be for some time. It spurts and starts because, of course, travel hasn't really started again. It's mostly in the bookings. Bookings are
Right.
brisk. And I think, as I mentioned, I think there's a gap in having enough people to be able to service the business when it all does come back. And people are actually panicking, oh my goodness, it's actually the quiet time is over. I really better
Yeah.
get on it. And so, there's lots of things that means, trying to return to normal before normal is here. But it is incredibly bright, and I'm so excited for advisors and for agency owners that have been in it for the long haul. And so, yeah, I see this. I see that it's actually happening, and people are doing everything they can to make it, to make it happen. And I think some owners are going, "Come on, advisors, the water's warm. It's okay." People who will not jump in until it's completely warm, and they feel confident. And there's that tension, but it's all, yeah, moving forward.
Mm. And I'm lucky. I live here in Europe, so all my guests, or a lot of my guests, are in North America, in the U.S., Canada, Australia, and they're all turning to me to ask, "What's happening? What's happening in Germany? What's happening?" And I'm very excited that I will be on the first sailing of the Ama Siena on July 29th. Ama invited me to come and sail with them and kind of, do some reporting from the ship and let everybody know what it's like. But I've already been traveling. We went to Gran Canaria a few weeks ago. We last weekend we did something we didn't do for a year. We took a spontaneous trip for the weekend away, and it felt very nice to be able to just go in and book something and head away for the weekend. Yes, there are protocols that you have to follow, and different countries have different rules. But the providers themselves are trying to make it very easy to understand. I know that AMA, for example, is making sure that guests know that any tests that are required, they will facilitate it so their guests can get whatever tests they need. The the thing is, we don't know what's coming, but we know a lot more on how to plan for risks, how to mitigate our risks, and what to do to kind of be a part of the solution. So whether that's, wearing your masks or getting your vaccine or, doing your tests and things, travel is starting again. And even if there are some things that are a little bit inconvenient, we've gone through inconveniences before and we've gotten through them. But the yearning to go places is like the biggest thing. And when somebody hits the lottery, what's one of the first things they say they're going to do with their money? They're going to travel. it's in us to wander. It's in us to go places, and it's starting here already. We see it. I see it out here in Berlin in the streets, and we're ready. So come visit us. We're waiting.
No, that's good. And I agree, like with what we're seeing at Travify, it's a staggered approach across the global industry. And it's interesting because you very much see how interconnected the industry is. That even if one country completely opens up, the travel industry within that country can't really get going fully until all of the other countries are moving kind of in lockstep. And so it's a staggered approach. And as if you can imagine seeing kind of lights turn on in a house, that we're seeing that within the industry. But one, a couple points of encouragement for those out there of look, if we had a crystal ball, the pent up demand is very real. Everyone that I'm talking to, especially in the US, is they're going nuts busy right now. Now it's a frustrating point in the business because let's be clear, even if you're charging fees, the commission doesn't come for some time. And so I know that's not lost on me that that's a challenging period, a challenging gap in the sales cycle because all of the sales cycles stopped and now they're all starting again. So we have to get through that first sales cycle together. So the demand's real. It's happening. So definitely be thinking about what systems and what things you can put in place to make yourself more efficient and be able to move more quickly in that process. But also, as Dave's talked about tending the garden, be thinking about how you can be the expert for your community, for your following on social media and stuff. And that can be across from little things. You have plenty of advisors that that live in other countries or other areas. Be sharing their posts within your social media feed because they can offer perspective and expertise that you can't, but you are an expert within your industry. So try to share some of those because that will really help. As a travel consumer, I do want to talk to travel advisors and use travel advisors, knowing what the industry's gone through. Obviously, I'm biased towards travel advisors personally, but the point still stands. Many other people are because they don't know how to make sense of all of the travel restrictions right now and what the patchwork that it is currently. So use your expertise to your advantage over the next several months.
Yeah, no, this is all so good. It is definitely, there's so many things that are just constantly changing. And I've talked to a lot of different advisors, and small little plug here that there'll be some podcasts coming up where we'll talk about, what it's like to travel to different countries and what's being expected right now and all that. But I think this is actually the perfect wrap up. And I've been watching comments, but it's amazing because everybody's kind of been helping to answer the questions in the comments and sharing things. So I feel like we actually are
community.
Good. Yeah, it's awesome. There are some people I know. Some people are asking Dave for your newsletter. So where would they go for that?
If they go to rivercruiseking.com, my little registration will pop up right away, and they can sign up for my newsletter. They can also follow me at Facebook, River Cruise King at Facebook or on YouTube. And I do a weekly talk on YouTube, and I have talked quite extensively about COVID and about what's happening over here in Europe and what I'm experiencing. Some people have said not to talk about those kind of things, just talk about the fun. But then I don't think I'm really doing my job for my guests. And I know that they're anxious. And sometimes a little bit of local knowledge gets people feeling a little bit better. So you can follow me also at YouTube at River Cruise King.
Awesome. That's great. And Geraldine, too, I know that you have a newsletter as well. So where can everyone find that?
Yeah, great. Thank you. I would love to connect with people. I'm at geraldinereed.com. It's all there.
Perfect. So easy.
I'm signing up.
Yeah, we're all going to sign up after that. Well, I get them. I love them. And sometimes we put Geraldine's content on Travify Academy. So academy.travify.com. Yeah, another little plug there. So many plugs. Look at this.
Well, I've learned a lot from you guys.
Sorry, can I just plug? I sincerely, when we talked about best practices and resource, what Travify Academy is doing is just so helpful. It's so time saving. It really, you aggregate what the pain points are in the industry for people, and you find solutions for them. So big kudos to you and the team for doing something that's so in service. you love travel agents and you do something about it. So thank you so much.
Oh,
Yes,
well,
thank
thank
you.
you.
As one of the travel agents, you have changed my delivery and you've made me look good. So thank you.
Yes. A high five through
I'm
the wall,
taking all the
Scott.
credit though.
We're high fiving through the wall. That
Yeah.
is all. Didn't tell them to say that. Swear. No,
Yeah.
that's it's so awesome, and I know that we'll continue to have these types of conversations too. Just as business is coming, but it's so exciting what is on the horizon. So exciting. And so, if there's anything too that anybody, if you did have a question you come up with after, you can email us at academy@travify.com, and we'll try to get that answered. But I just want to say once again, thank you so much to our panelists here today. This was awesome, and we could talk
Pleasure.
all day long. This was really fun. So thank you for joining us.
Awesome.
Thank you for
Thanks,
having me.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care. And you